Tutankhamun exhibit that toured the United States in the 1970s, the Egyptian boy king who lived in around 1500 BC, and was astounded at this, what was in effect time travel machine, this opportunity to see back into a different time. I began to apply the tools of modern genetics to the study of the ancient past. When I was a teenager, I had the opportunity, when my mother went back to school to get her PhD in biology, to spend time in the lab with her and discover that science is an amazing field. You're solving puzzles using the latest technology. And resolved, by the time that I started university, that I would use the tools of modern science to study our ancient past. And that is what I have done with my career. Now, why is it so important to use the tools of modern science to study something that almost seems like a philosophical question? Where do we all come from is ultimately what we're trying to get at. It does seem somewhat philosophical, and it's been approached using scientific tools for a long time. The field of paleoanthropology, going out and digging up bones out of the ground, the work of the Leakeys and other famous paleoanthropologists over the last century and a half or so, is a real tantalizing clues about where we all came from as a species. But it hasn't really given us the answers that we're looking for as scientists. Where did we as modern humans originate, and how did we spread around the world, in the process generating the patterns of diversity that we see today? Well, a different type of scientist, geneticists in particular, began to study this problem in the 1950s, using the ancient tools of so-called classical polymorphisms, blood groups, HLA types, and so on. But it was really only in the 1980s and the 1990s, with the development of DNA technology, the ability to sequence DNA, short segments at first, and now, with advances in technology, entire genomes, that we've been able to get the answers to these questions of where do we come from, and how did we spread around the world? Now, I have done field work in many locations around the globe, from sub-Saharan Africa to Central Asia. I've driven a Land Rover from London to Mongolia via the Stans of Central Asia, the Caucasus, Iran. I've done field work in Southeast Asia, and I've been lucky enough to do field work in India with my colleague, Professor Pitchapan. Initially, when I was running a research team at Oxford University in the 1990s, and then later with the Genographic Project, which I directed at the National Geographic Society for over a decade. And our efforts in India have yielded some fascinating clues. The overall story, the overall human story, is that all modern humans trace back to common ancestors who lived in Africa within the last 200,000 years. It was only in the last 50 to 60,000 years that humans started to leave that continent to populate the rest of the world. Amazingly, one of the first things that we discovered was that the very first place that modern humans seem to have gone upon leaving Africa was southern India, following a coastal route along the coast of South Asia, leading them to present-day Tamil Nadu and other places in the southern part of India. And we found genetic markers that date back to 50,000 years or so. Using the Y chromosomes, it's been confirmed with other markers such as mitochondrial DNA, and even patterns found in the rest of the genome connecting them to people found in the rest of Asia, in Australia, even in the Americas. But that initial foray out of Africa led them to Tamil Nadu and to southern India. And it was a wonderful confirmation of something I think many Tamil people understand, that they have been living in that part of the world for a very long time, far longer than people might have suspected. Now, I have a presentation here which I could tell you all about this in great detail, but in the interest of time, I'm going to end there. I'd like to again thank you very much for inviting me to come and talk to you, and I'll pass it on to the next one.